Hi, I'm Dr. Blanche Grube. I would like to share with you a very special event in my life that occurred in July of 2013, in the year 2013. I had the incredible pleasure and opportunity to meet Dr. Olympio Pinto in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Let me tell you now who Dr. Olympio Pinto is. He is one of the most foremost dentists in the country of Brazil. He is also a Mercury Free Dentist and always has been. In fact, his father, Olympio Pinto, was a Mercury Free Dentist at the beginning of the 20th century, at a time when many people refer to it as Amalgam Wars II was going on. When Amalgam War I occurred in Paris, when they first discovered that you could put in an silver amalgam filling loaded with mercury, silver, tin, copper, shove it in somebody's tooth, and you would have an inexpensive, quick way to fill a hole in a tooth. And the dentists who knew their chemistry and knew that mercury was toxic fought against the dentists that wanted to put silver mercury fillings in people's teeth. And so that's referred to as Amalgam Wars I. Then amalgam began to spread from Paris to the United States into South America. And so I guess you could say that Olympio Pinto's father was part of Amalgam Wars II, when there was a division again between the dentists that knew mercury was toxic and those that only saw it from an economic point of view and saw that it was an easy, fast way to put a filling in somebody's tooth. So that was his father. Olympio Pinto grew up in that atmosphere, grew up with an understanding of how toxic mercury was. And he became Brazil's leading mercury-free dentist. He had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Hal Huggins in Mexico City. And that was a historical event because at that point, Olympio Pinto became the mentor for Dr. Hal Huggins. As many of you know, Dr. Hal Huggins has been my mentor for many years. And so in an emotional sort of way, I felt that the circle had come full all the way around to Olympio Pinto mentoring Hal Huggins, Hal Huggins mentoring me, and then my returning back to Brazil to get to meet Olympio Pinto. So this was a historical meeting. It was a very pleasurable meeting, and I'd like to share some of that with you for those of you who are interested. So I'm going to roll the camera now, and you're going to get to see some of our first conversations that we had with Olympio Pinto.
Mexico City in 1973. In 1972, I had already given a lecture there, stating my position, and it raised such a spur that they called me again for the next year, which was supposed to be a world conference.
Well, how did Huggins and you meet? Like, I know it was at the conference, but was he like in the beginning? Was he open-minded to your suggestion?
Oh yes, he was always very open-minded, but. His position was very clear that he says, show me the science, like David says, or give me facts, you know.
Right.
And I didn't have conducted any experiments. I knew from clinical evidence, from my time and from my father's.
Now, what did your father find? Because you said that your father just didn't like the way they looked and, you know, the taste. Did he, I mean, back then, you said in the early 1920s or something?
1929.
Did he start to see physical improvement when he was removed?
Yeah.
Interesting.
People start flocking to his clinic because...
In the jungle.
Yeah. Because by word of mouth, relatives and their relatives, you know, I had stomach problems and I'm cured. I had knee problems, I'm cured. I had tiredness and anemia and all kinds of blood diseases and rheumatic disease, all kinds of things. So in about 5 or 10 years, when he started practicing, people came from all over the country because of word of mouth. You know, in those days there was no internet, even telephone. There was, you know.
But they didn't even have composites in those days.
Nothing.
I don't even know if they had silicates in those days.
They had silicates. Yes, they had silicates.
Wow.
But my dad did not like silicates because silicates always had phosphoric acid free,
right.
And it would end up killing the tooth.
Right.
What would he replace the amalgam with, the silver film?
Once he took it out, what would he put in?
Well, he put gold inlet.
Okay.
You know, either gold foil or gold inlet.
Okay.
And this is funny because people start hearing the stories that he cured all kinds of diseased states that even the physicians could not cure.
Right.
Because can you imagine a physician never looks at the mouth?
That is true today.
And then the physicians start getting jealous. Says, go to the whack, go to the
whack. They still call us that.
And the patients start complaining that they were going to the physician for 1 or 2 years and they got worse and got worse. He said, well, look for the quack. And it got so bad that one day there was 2 or 3 physicians in town, and my father was the only dentist, and there were a few practical technician dentists, that would make teeth with their fingers, and they even start like a gossip in town. That he was a quack and that they would invite him to leave town because it's no place for quacks.
Incredible.
And they tied a donkey in the lamppost in front of my father's office, full of strings with cans, just like and recently. And then just go with the posts, leave town, quack, and things like that. It was a kind of humiliation. But my father was very patient. He didn't mind the gossiping and the bad, foul mouth.
What was your father's name?
Olympio. He was
also.
And my mother was Martha.
Martha. And your daughter is Martha.
Yes. And in those days, they would mix the amalgam in a glass jar, and they would squeeze with the cloth over the floor.
I started as a dental assistant at 19 doing
and
that.
The floor was, big board with the joints. And I believe that both my mother and my father were breathing mercury vapor all the time.
Did your mother work with your father?
Yes. She was like an assistant, And so I told her, I says, go home and take it. You don't need to believe me. Try. Next year we'll speak again.
Right.
And after the conference, I spoke to Huggins until very late at night because we had 2 or 3 more days in conference. And I said, look, after I finish here, I'm going to visit Dr. Melvin Page in St. Petersburg.
Lord, yeah.
And, I was relating to him all the clinical cases that I had and all the diseases that disappeared when we take mercury out. And he decided to go with me to see Page. And Page, because I went to Page every month of February, something like that, for 23 years in a row, because he was known to rescue patients in despair coming from Boston, New York, Minnesota, San Diego.
I hope you're enjoying this portion of the interview that I had with Dr. Olympio Pinto. I know that you can hear some background noises. You have to remember that his office was in the city of Rio de Janeiro, so there's a lot of background sounds going on. It was a very informal meeting and a very pleasurable one for me, and I hope you're enjoying it also. Let's get back to the video.
After the conference, I had 2 or 3 days with Huggins, and we had a brainstorm about Mercury, and he was teaching me all about vitamins because I didn't have 10% of his information.
Right.
Then he went to Florida with me, and Dr. Page, whom he also respected very much, reinforced that my position had everything to be correct.
Right.
So after he left Page, he went home and he started looking at the patients with the silver fillings and taking it out. And of course, he's so meticulous that he had even better results than I. So I credit Huggins with the entire credit for this thing to have spread over, because I think over the years we made hundreds of seminars teaching dentists and showing them facts. And
he's still teaching today.
Yeah. I think Huggins has a lot of merit for what he has done.
Yes.
But for about half a century, I've been facing ridicule and joking about my position, because it's bread and butter for dentists, all over the world. In 1982, there was a National Geographic magazine that had a very dramatic article, Mercury Slow Death. And I don't have this copy anymore, but I believe it may be accessed in the internet.
National Geographic.
National Geographic.
What year?
Okay.
I think it was September 82. It could be 82 or 72. I don't know exactly. But in those days, they didn't know the symptoms from dental fillings, but it reported that just the army dentists have done more than 3 million amalgam fillings in that 1 year, So it's quite an important statistics for the time, and they had pictures of the Almaden mines of mercury in Spain. As a matter of fact, it might be interesting to get some contacts in Spain and have them put their wines. Almaden is famous for their wines.
Almaden.
Almaden.
Yeah.
Put their wines in red. It's atomic absorption spectrometer, infrared atomic spectrometer, because it will accuse if the wine there has mercury, because it's the most famous mine mercury in the world.
That's correct.
They have, I don't know if it's still operating, but
they closed it maybe 5 or 6 years ago. The United Nations helped to pay to close that mine. It was the biggest producer of mercury for centuries. They closed within the last 10 years.
Roman Empire, from the time of the Roman Empire, they used to mine mercury there.
Yep.
But I think it would be a good document to have to show how far back mercury is used. Some historians say that the Roman Empire, and one of the reasons it collapsed was because of the rich people, the politicians in those days. They used to drink wine in gold cups.
Right.
But it was
The chalice.
they thought they had discovered a way to manufacture gold with mercury.
Right.
They would amalgamate gold with mercury and then gold plate all the lead cups.
Right. And so while they were drinking the wine, they were giving themselves a dose of mercury.
Yeah. It's very interesting to study the entire history.
Yeah.
And then in 1972, they realized the problem with Minamata.
Right.
Minamata started in 1932.
1932.
Oh, wow.
Oh, so it was a 40-year period.
Yeah, the Shiso Corporation started leaching effluents in Minamata Bay in 1932.
I didn't know it was that
Then in
early.
1952, they suspected of mercury, and the University of Yamamoto, they found out that the cats were dying, the birds were dying, and they started questioning the Shiso Corporation.
Mm-hmm.
And from 1952 to 72, they produced the entire documentation about the pollution of Minamata Bay. So it took 60 years for the problem to be officially accepted. 1932 to 52, contamination. 1952 to 72, documentation. In 1972, the government came in and says, you must stop. And then there were already 20,000 victims with neurological problems. In the beginning, they start thinking it was something like poliomyelitis, and then they realized it was not polio, and then they start checking, and the professor of chemistry there went there, and they start giving mussels,
Seafood testing
seafood
them.
to the cats, and they found out that the cats went crazy.
Right.
And they had symptoms just like the fishermen. So after we had the suspicion that it was mercury in dentistry. But in 1957, just as I start digging the literature at Georgetown, I discovered a paper from Dr. Frickholm in Acta Odontologica Scandinavia, and he tagged the mercury with mercury 203, and sure enough, mercury showed up in the liver, bones, kidney, heart.
So he did that way before the Calgary study.
Oh, yes.
Right, interesting.
1957.
Wow.
But let me ask you this, Olympio. Now, your dad, he really did not know.
No, he didn't have any scientific evidence at all. He just saw flabbergasting clinical cases of recovery,
So what did he ask you to do?
When I went to the States, he said, Sonny, look it up, because I have no explanation for this, but I am the miracle man,
Absolutely.
Did you study at Georgetown?
At Georgetown.
Okay.
Georgetown University.
It was quite a challenge.
And we find ourselves in a similar position now with the root canal issue.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of science to show that root canals...
I wanted to hear your opinion about this, because as a matter of fact, there was another thing that I discussed a lot with Hal and with beginning to forget names because I don't go there for a long time. Shai, they're both Huggins and I'll remember his name.
George Mining?
George Mining. George Mining he was here for the Echo.
Okay.
And I had a friend in San Diego, the Pat Conley from the Price Pottinger Foundation.
Correct.
Her husband, Dr. Conley, had mercury poisoning, and he was in wheelchair already.
Right.
Because he used to practice same thing like my father in a house with boards, floor, and it was full of mercury.
Mm-hmm.
And when I met her first time, he was already in a wheelchair. And she showed me at the library at Price Pottinger the books of Weston Price.
Right.
And Weston Price has 2 volumes about this thick.
Correct.
For focal infection, systemic, oral and systemic. Focal infection, oral and systemic. And I was very impressed that he spoke about the root canal teeth and focal infection in the mouth. In the days of Price, there was no antibiotic, so they had a chance to study focal infection from a different standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
After the antibiotics came to the market after the Second World War, it masked everything.
That's very true.
And we were taught in dental school that there was no such thing as the theory of focal infection. It didn't exist, which couldn't be any further from the truth.
I think now there is no way to deny it. As far as focal infection, I think Price showed beyond doubt when he implanted teeth that were autoclaved under the skin of rabbits and guinea pigs and repeated the signs and symptoms of the patients. But now with radiochemistry and with what do you call infrared computerized spectrometry, you can show it. I have to give you a CD from Dr. Backhaus from the University of Mannheim. Let me see what Professor Backhaus is a scientist in the University of Mannheim in Germany. And he was a friend of a veterinarian, we call
animal doctor.
And I made an institute in 100 miles south of Rio. And she was the veterinarian for, I was doing scallop culture, sea farming.
Right.
And she introduced me to this Dr. Backhaus. And he has a spectrometer about this big, size of a small TV. Diagnoses cancer 100% precision. Diagnoses drug addiction, any biochemical deviation.
Right.
Since you have a background of chemistry, you should see this.
Yeah.
If you have time, we'll look at it. I just changed my computer from Windows to Apple and might not show up, but I'll give you the CD.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
This guy is worth going visit him in Germany because it's so simple, and I'm sure it could be used to show the problem of focal infection.
Right.
You can even develop immunological defense against bacteria, but you cannot develop against toxins.
That's correct.
The problem with focal infection is the toxins that are
Right. Exactly.
leaching from the root canal tooth.
See, the work that Dr. Huggins is doing now with DNA, he's extracting the DNA of the bacteria that are surrounding the root canal teeth and are inside of the cavitations. So after we extract the teeth and after we clean out the cavitation, we take a sample of the blood. He extracts the DNA and then tells us which bacteria are very active and are producing a lot more toxins. Okay, and so that's where, at least now we have justification. Unfortunately, after the fact, we've already taken out the tooth. We have justification after we've taken out the tooth to show what kind of bacteria are actually producing toxins in there.
Yeah, I think with the back house technique, you can do it, live.
Before the tooth is taken out.
And before and after to show the difference.
Right.
This is a fantastic.
See, that's what Dr. Boyd Haley tried to do. And he succeeded.
Yeah.
He developed a paper point test, and we would test the root canal tooth before we took it out. Put a small sterile paper point, just like you would do for root canal culture.
In the early days,
right? In the early days, we would take a culture. Of course, the culture would always come back positive.
My father used to do that.
Right.
Your dad used to do that?
Oh, he was way ahead of his time. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching portions of our conversation with Dr. Olympio Pinto. It was certainly one of the high points of my career, and a visit and a trip that I will never